In this video, we're going to be taking a look at how to set up an easy template to utilize with our easy envelope function here in the font manager. So there's easy envelope. How do we go about setting up an easy template to work with easy envelope? And we're going to show the example of setting up an easy template for this type of text configuration, where we have large letter on the front and back ends here, and then we have the smaller letters in the middle. And then as kind of a bonus section, we're actually going to stone that text out to show you how I go about creating that text using EasyStone. So first we have to build our template, and it's really straightforward to do if you understand how CorelDRAW works a little bit. So let's go ahead and grab a rectangle. We're going to apply an envelope to this rectangle, and we're going to be using this option here, which is the secondary option, which is the single arc mode. If we hold our control key and grab one of these control points here, you can see how it will move both of those curves at the same time. If we didn't have our control key pressed, then it would only work with one at a time. So that's the advantage to holding your control key down. So what we've done here is we've just arced this text just a little bit. Now I'm going to convert this to curves. I'm going to grab my shape tool here and just make it a little bit thinner, something like so. Alright, so now we need this drop letter on both sides. And to do that, all we're going to do is just make a duplicate of this box, right click, and that will make us a duplicate. It's a little bit taller here. Then I'm going to grab my 2-point line tool and just drag out a line like so. Now I need a line to the right, but the same distance from the edge of my shape here. So just hit the plus key on my keyboard, hold my shift key down, grab a shape and flip it. And now you can see I have this line on the right the same distance from the edge of my shape. I'm then going to grab my Smart Fill tool and click here. Then I'm going to change my fill color to anything, doesn't matter. Click, 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 and click, click, click. Alright? So now I have to take these three shapes. These are actually three shapes that I just created with my Smart Fill tool, and I need to weld those together. So we'll weld those together on the front end, we'll weld them together on the back end, and we'll weld them together here in the middle. So now we have three new shapes. Here we go. There's our three new shapes. Now, when you're creating easy templates, you'll see that there's a bunch of extraneous nodes here. This isn't really required, but I always make it a habit if I see straight lines and there's extra nodes to dispose of them if we don't really have to have them, which in this case we really don't have to have them. So if we have a straight node there, straight lines, we just get rid of the extra nodes. Again, you don't have to do that. I just like to do that for nice cleanup. So this now becomes a placeholder for our easy envelope function, but it doesn't actually function at this point the way it should. And that's because we have to actually tell EasyStone that these three shapes are placeholder shapes for easy envelope. So let me show you how we go about doing that. If I select one of the shapes as is right now, you notice here on the bottom it says curve on layer 1. So that to EasyStone means absolutely nothing. So what we need to do is select our shapes, open up our font manager here, and shift and click on easy envelope. And what that does is now when we select that shape, you see now it says placeholder on layer 1. It says placeholder on layer 1, and now it says placeholder on layer 1. So now EasyStone knows that these really are placeholders for easy envelope. So now let's go ahead and grab our text. So we're just going to type out the letter E for this first example, and then we're going to type out A-G-L-E, and then we're going to come over here and let's do S. Let's change the font to Times New Roman is what I'm going to use for this example, and I'm just going to make a duplicate of this, and this now will become T and I-G-E-R and then S. I just want to show you how it works with the two different words here. So we just take our letter E and our first box and easy envelope, and we take our letter S and our last box and easy envelope, and then we take eagles in the middle And so now you can see how we've created eagles here. Now if we want to do the same thing with tigers, it would be the same thing. We just T for tigers. And so whatever word that we want to create, we can automatically put it in position there. Now you see this weird thing that's happening with our S. Let me back up one and see if we chose one of the other options. So this is vertical, horizontal, this is putty, and this is original. What if we chose original and easy envelope? There we go. See, we don't have that little anomaly. So if you wanted to use easy envelope to quickly place vector text, so this is vector text ready to go, you could ready to cut, you could use it that way, but in our case we're actually going to stone it out. Alright, so what we're going to do is just take our text here and set the text to our finished size, which in my case will be about 9.5 inches. Alright, so now I would go about creating and actually, I tell you what, I'm thinking about this. I'm going to back up just a little bit because I want to show you another option that I forgot to show you. So here's our T and our first placeholder. If we right click, it leaves the placeholder in place. Alright, so let's go ahead and push these placeholders down. So that is important. If we right click, it leaves it in place. Right click, leaves it in place because we're actually going to use those placeholders for our next process, which is of course stoning it out. So we're going to change the whole thing to 9.5 inches overall, and then I'm going to show you, I think what I'm going to do here is, yeah, I'll just leave it like that. What I want to do is I want to show you how I would go about stoning this out. And this is where the kind of the designer in me comes out, and I can basically do pretty much whatever I want to do at this point. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to right click on SS10. We're going to do this in crystal for this example. Right click on AS, and what that does is it drops a single stone. And I'm going to use this placeholder to kind of, what it'll actually do is it'll arch these stones a little bit. So I'm just going to come all along that placeholder, all the way around, and all I'm doing is moving and hitting my spacebar. That's all I'm doing. Okay? And you can see there's no like real precision here. I just want to show you how I would go about tackling this particular design. So what I'm doing is placing the stone on the edge of my placeholder and then just simply hitting the spacebar. That's it. And then I'm probably going to do the same thing up top. Position it where I want it. Spacebar, spacebar, something like so. And just keep going. So here's the top of my E. So I have kind of an unconventional method to some degree, but you'll see how this all comes together here in a moment. So spacebar, and I'm just, the center of that stone is getting right there on that spacebar, or on that edge, and then I'm hitting spacebar. So I'll switch that out to a 16. Alright, so let's just take our letter R quick here for a minute. So I'm going to even out this spacing of these stones, right click D. Okay, now I know I want to use, I'm going to get rid of my path that these stones are on. I know I want to use an SS16 stone there. And then I'm just going to kind of just eyeball 16, 16, 16, 16. So all I'm doing is hitting the space bar. And I know that that connecting one is going to be a 10. I hit the plus key on my keyboard. So let's sort these stones right here and see what the stone spacing is right now, just for these stones right here. Right click on D. So you can see I don't have enough spacing, or I have too much spacing rather. So let's try it again. So yeah, so we'll just give it a little bit more spacing between stones. And that looks good. That looks better. So we'll leave it at that. And then we're just going to pull this SS16 straight up. Fill in between the two with Shift AS. Next to those, we're going to do 6s. Just because I always think that looks so nice next to 16s like that. It just gives it a nice little extra look like that. So we'll go ahead and use 6s in this particular instance. And then for here, I think we will just use a 16 down the leg there. And then we'll drop in a little SS6 stone as well there. Alright, so that takes care of my R. And then for my E, I'm going to right click on D. I'm going to add a couple of stones, delete my path, do the same thing along the bottom here. So we'll select our stones along the bottom. This one we'll go ahead and bring over a little bit. Right click on D, add a stone or two. Then we'll go ahead, spacebar, spacebar, and I'm just going to hand place those. Grab an SS16 from our R, and in this case I think we're just going to use a 16. We're not going to add another row of stones. Well, actually I think we have to now that I think about this, because I thought this was an end cap, but we did it in the middle too, so all the letters should have the same thickness there. So let's go ahead and we'll do that. Then we'll make this a 6. Grab the right stone here, make that a 6. And we'll pull it all the way up. We'll fill in the gap between. There we go. Okay, and then we'll come down, spacebar, 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 and then we'll come across. I think we're going to come across the 16s too. 3 of them. And then we'll switch over to 10s. Like so. And I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and I'll tell you what. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. I'm not sure what we're going to do there. So we'll back it off for now. So we're going to use 6s up to this point for the end cap of our G. And then, so we have to design every single letter to know exactly what we, the designer, want it to look like. So I think I am going to go ahead and go with some SS10s around, maybe to this point, and then we'll switch over to 16s. All the way down, right down to there. So up to that point, these are going to be 10s. And then it's going to switch over to 16. So let's take all of this, right click on D, let's do it again. Nice even spacing all the way around. Right click on D just to tighten that up. And then vertically here, we're going to go horizontally with some 10s. So spacebar, 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 and then we're going to do vertical SS16s. And then just like over here, we're going to do some vertical 6s. Same way. And then go ahead and make that connection like so. And then I am going to put in some 6s here. Like so. Move this one all the way up here. 6, 6, 6. Connect these two. So you can see there's no real exact science to any of this, really. It's just whatever you, the designer, feels like it needs. So, and you know what, you can kind of go back and forth, change your mind, which often will be the case once you get to really scrutinizing the design. When it's all said and done, you may decide to go do something completely different than what you had originally intended. So this is just to give you an idea of kind of the thought process that I go through when creating a design more than anything. So we'll connect these two, Shift AS, borrow 6 over here, move that straight up, AS. Alright, so now we more or less have the word tigers there in the middle. We're going to grab a 10 and come across, give it just a slight arch, doesn't have to be much. There we go. And then across the top, I think we're going to do 16s. So we'll put a 16 there, put a 16 there, and then, yeah, we're going to come down with a 16 or 2, and then probably switch those to 10s. Same thing over here, come down with a 16 or 2, and then switch it over to 10s. And then for our vertical, yeah, we're going to do the same thing. I think we'll do 16, and then instead of doing 16 and 6, what we're going to do is we're going to do 16 and 10 rather than 16 and 16. I always think that secondary stone size just looks a little bit classier, looks a little bit nicer next to it. Alright, so then we have our S over here, which we're going to kind of do the same thing. I always like doing S's because they're a lot more challenging to make it look right. So we have to utilize some different techniques. So I'll show you what we're going to do here with our S. So we are going to, probably at the cap here, go with a 16, just kind of come around like so. And then up here we're going to do basically the same thing. We're going to start off with a 16. Whoops. 16, 16. So we're just I'm just kind of positioning them loosely at this point. So we'll do something like that. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and sort these stones that I already have in place here. So let's go ahead and do that with our freehand pick tool. I'm just going to come in here and sort all these, and that will give them a nice even spacing. So we'll just right click. Let's see here. Something didn't go right that time around, so we're going to undo. And I suspect it's because of what I had selected. So you can see here I have an extra stone selected over here that shouldn't be. And if I move these stones away, I have a few stones that aren't selected that should be. So I'll hold my shift key down to add to that selection. And now I can right click and sort the stones. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill that back in a little bit there. So now I have that all nicely filled in. We're going to drop that maybe down to a 6. Drop this to a 6 here. we're going to come down here, do the same thing basically. And then we have to talk about, well, what are we going to do to, because we have all these other ones where it's a little bit, the text is a little bit thicker. So what we're going to do here for our secondary line on our S, we're going to start out with a 6, a 6, a 6. Start out with some 6s, then we're going to switch over to 10s. Then we're going to come down to the bottom here and do basically the same thing. So we're going to start out with a 6, a 6, a 6, and then we're going to switch over to 10s. And I try to keep it symmetrical. Doesn't always work out that way, but I do try and keep it. So if I'm using 3 SS6 starter stones there, then I would use, so here I use 4 up top. So that's good because I think I could actually use a 4th one and then go to 10s. So I don't know. Those are just little things that I think about that, you know, at the end of the day probably really don't matter that much, but I try to keep it symmetrical if I can. Alright, there we go. So I think that's pretty well the way I want it. Alright, so now I can get rid of my placeholders. I don't need those anymore. I can get rid of my text because I don't need it anymore. And then I can fine-tune the design exactly how it's looking and so forth. We can make any minor adjustments that we need to make. Some letters are too close together. So we're going to fix all this. I don't like the T here. You can see that these stones are kind of going off at an angle. So I don't like that. So even though that might have been how the original text was, I think I just would soon have them dead center like this. So it's just a matter of personal preference. But I think I would like it like that better. Alright, so that looks good. We do need to move our S over a little bit because it's right close to our R here. And I'm going to move my S up a little bit because it looks a little too far down. And I wonder if I could just come in here and rather than move our S over, if I could just shorten it up on the bottom, if that would look too weird. No, actually I don't think that looks that bad. So I think I'm just going to leave it like that. That'll be alright. So that basically will become our finished Tigers text. So let's go ahead and check for overlaps. And there was one. We'll check for any defined shapes, and there are none. And so then we'll go ahead and add a read box around it. We'll make a duplicate of it. And then we'll go ahead and create a quick proof of it. And that then will become our finished product. There is our word Tigers and how we can take advantage of those easy templates. Thanks for watching.